Hi guys, it's Sam for Digital Meat, and this is part 3 of setting up your player character with Mecanim and Playmaker within Unity. And if you remember where we left it off last time, at the end of the last tutorial I brought up an issue that we had, and if I click play, where basically we've got our walk sorted out and we've got our run. When we press the right trigger, that seems to be all working quite well, but we've got an issue when we press B for crouch. He shrinks, and when we uncrouch, and there's a reason for this, so let's just get straight into it. I suppose if we go to our B button crouch here, we've in our FSM, again, that was in an older tutorial that was set up here, Playmaker crouch action for Xbox controller in Unity. For some things it might be alright to choose the method that I did in this tutorial, but for what we're doing here, it really isn't. So we don't want to be, what's happening is we're pressing the B button and then it's being passed on to this, and we've got an iTween scale to, and what we're scaling is the FPS controller, and we don't want that at all. So in fact, for this crouch then, we can remove this, remove action, and then we've got another listener just waiting for a button press, and we've got an iTween back up to what it was, so we can remove that as well. So those are empty now. But before we get totally into the Playmaker stuff, there's something to note in our scene. Okay, so let's grab our first person camera. In fact, this should illustrate this perfectly. We've got our FPS controller here, and our first person camera is zeroed out on the X and Z positions, and we can choose its height in the Y. So if I put it all the way down here to, let's make it 0 actually, let's zero this out, and then press play, you can see that it's a lot lower now, which is absolutely fine. So let's just undo that move that I made there. Okay. But if I pull it out in the Z position, so as you can see in this camera preview window here, I'm looking right at the back of his head there. You can see that I'm proper close up to it. But when I hit play, you'll see that the camera snaps back to this position here, which is 0, which we don't want. We would like to be able to control where our camera is. So I'm just going to undo those movements that I've made. There we go. So everything's back. Just Control Z in there, by the way, just in case you weren't aware. So we could do this with script, or alter the FPS controller script, get access to it, but there's a much easier way to do it than that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty object. I'm going to rename this empty object camera position, and then I'm going to actually put it under the first person character, just so I can zero out everything so it matches where our current camera's position is. Then I'm going to take it out of there and put it under the FPS controller, so it's a child of it. I'd like it at the top, really. Yeah, there we go. And then we're going to take our first person camera and we're going to dump that inside of it, so make it a child of that. This action will break the prefab instance. Are you sure you wish to continue? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so now if I actually grab the camera position and move it forward, we can see that that's the view we're getting there, and now hit play. There we go. It stays exactly where we want it to be, which is a lot better for us. Okay, so now we've got that sorted out, let's get our camera position back to where we want it. Just Control Z in. Okay, so we've got our Z back to 0 there. And now we can choose our FPS controller. Right. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to set up our character to be within the bounds of our FPS controller. So this little bad boy here. So let's drag our character. Let's actually make our character let's zero out his Z position, so he should be on top of that thing now. There we go, so he's right smack bang in the middle of it. Okay, so there's a few things that we probably want to do to start off. We need to adjust the height, I'd say, of the character controller, because it is not matching up with him as a character. So okay, let's make his height, let's say 1.7 for the sake of argument, and see what that gives us. Okay, in fact, if we go into this view and you click in the middle here, it will give us an orthographic view, so we can actually see if it's actually lining up or not. So I'm just going to hit play now and go back to the scene, and you can actually see now that he's lifted off the floor by quite a lot. I wonder why. Oh, and the reason for that is because obviously I've just changed the height. So let's sorry for the wait. Okay, so let's make some changes to this then. The collider is obviously not covering around his entire body, so that's something that we want to alter there, and that'll be to do with his radius. So I'm just going to change that to 0.18 maybe. It's nearly spot on. Yeah, that's fine actually. Great. I'm going to also change the FPS controller's position as well, because it's kind of in the ground now that we've made him higher. So I'm going to change that to 0.85 with that. Yeah, lovely. Great. That'll do. It's through the floor a little bit. And then the character's position is obviously way off, so we can bring him down. Now remember, we kind of want him clipping through the floor a bit. So I actually figured this out before, so that's why I know. So if we go to 0.87, his feet are clipping through the floor slightly, but because of that slight jump we're going to get from our FPS controller, we'll hit play now. That's the inside of his mouth, if you're wondering. It's alright, we can go back to our scene view, and yes, he does look like he's stood on the floor. So that's absolutely great. I'd say that maybe his the actual size of the collider over his head is maybe a little bit too much, but let's have a look in our view. It's not too bad, and I suppose it prevents clipping when, if we get any clipping when we jump up and we hit a ceiling. That'll do us for now. I think that'll be fine. I think we're going to just leave it like that. But the great thing about this is the fact that now our collider's set around our actual person, and we've set it up so the camera can be moved. We can actually drag his camera position backwards. Let's have a look at the preview. In fact, let's just play this for a minute. Okay, that's great. And the nice thing about it now is, whereas before where we was using the right thumbstick to rotate, and it was actually shifting our character to because the pivot was where we are, now we pivot around the character by doing this because his FPS controller is around him. So it obviously makes a lot more sense, especially when we're running around like this. Looks a lot nicer. But this also helps us in terms of what we're going to do with the crouching as well, because we need to change the height of the character controller's, his collision capsule. So now we've got this set up, we can actually make some informed choices about how high his capsule should be, which is great. Okay, so what's next on our agenda? This is, I suppose this is all sorted now, isn't it? Let's choose the camera position and let's just move him back maybe let's just get a nice position. Oh, I don't want to do it in the X. You can do it in the Y though. Yeah, let's just get him on the screen. There we go, so we can see the bulk of him now. Just make sure that works okay. Cool, we're staring at his ass. Yeah, looking pretty smooth though, that's good. Okay, so now we've sorted that. Let's get into the crux of our crouching. Okay, so we've got this listener, it's listening for a B button press, and then it goes to this, which was an I-tween, but we've deleted that earlier, which is, and rightly so. So what we're going to need? We're going to need to animate a float. And there it is. That's lovely. And we're probably going to need the same thing on here as well. But that's fine. Let's have a look. Right, animate float. What is the float variable that we want to animate? Well, we haven't got one yet. We're going to have to create one. So this float variable, we're going to create a new variable and we're going to call it crouching. So let's have a look at our variables. Yeah, brilliant. Just want to check my globals quick. No, that's fine. Okay, so we've got this float called crouching. And we want to animate it. So we actually want to go from his current height, which is, if you check the FPS controller, is 1.7. And we want to be going to another value. So what should that value be? I'm going to say half the height of our current controller. So that's around what we got. So 1.7, so that'll be 0.85. I think that's how we're going to do it. Okay, so let's go back to our B button crouch. Open up this window. We're going to choose linear. And we want to animate this float from, what did we say? It was 1.7. You can move this, and if you hold shift, it will clip it to the grid lines. And I think, yeah, there you go. So shift locks it to this line up here. Actually, control lets you sort of jump between. You can zoom out here as well, just using the mouse wheel. So we want to make sure we're on 0 in terms of time, and we're going to put this up to, did we say 1.7? I think we did. So hold control, oh no, start moving it and hold control, and then you can see the value there written. So there's 1.7. Okay, there you go, it's appeared now. Okay, so 1.7. How long do we want this to take? Well, a second. This is the time along the bottom here. A second is way too long for a crouch. We want the animation to take place way quicker than that. So again, you can lock it to that line by holding shift, and we can press there we go. So 0.5, that's at 0.5 in there. Okay, so that's good. So we're going to, but now we've got to pick our value. So yeah, we've got 1.7 up here. So we don't want to be going down all the way to, we've got a value of 1 there, I think. So yeah, we actually want to be going down to a value that's way lower than this. So let's drag this down to 0.85. There we go. So we start off at 1.7 and then go to half that value at 0.85, and it takes us 0.5 of a second. So that's set. That's great. Okay, so what next? Finish event? No. Real time? We don't need that either. So we can move on to the next thing we're going to need to set, and that is going to be, I'm going to use an action called controller settings. Controller. Yeah, where are we? There we go. Controller settings. There we go. So this is basically asking us what we want to be changing. Now this float variable crouching, we want to change our height and we want to use that variable. So we're going to choose crouching. And just to test that these are actually working, I'm going to press play. Obviously, bear with me. We won't maximize on play. We'll hit. So it's get button down, and then I press the B button, and you could see it animating that float. And press it again, and that float is being animated. Okay. So that's absolutely grand. Right. It's saying, what's the game object? Game object requires a character controller component. So we need to say specify the game object, and we need to drag in this FPS controller. And now it should be setting this parameter here, height. Okay, well, let's just duplicate this the other side then. So I'm going to select this and this. You can select multiples, by the way, by holding shift. And then we can say copy selected actions, then go here, and I'm going to paste these as well. We need to reverse this float now, so when it finds another button press, it reverses this float. So this value actually needs to be the same. This actually needs to be 0.85, and this one needs to be 0.7. I can't see the value. There we go. Okay, so there we go, 1.7. Okay, so that animates that float. It changes this height as well. I don't think we need it in real time. No, we don't. But this is the problem. Silly me. Must have been frustrating for you guys watching that. Every frame we need checked. So we need to check that float every frame. Now, hopefully, it'll detect a button press, yeah, and you can see that it's actually... Well, it's not letting me press it again for some reason. That's good. But you can see that he's moving through the floor, so something's definitely happening now. Which is great. So we've got our crouch and animate float. It's being passed to our controller settings, which is, dictated crouching every frame. And on this one, it's doing the same thing, I think. Crouching, it's doing our height. And that is doing it every frame as well. So what else do we need? We need to... The guy's obviously going through the floor, so we need to move the guy. So as we crouch, because he is actually a child of the FPS controller, and its sort of pivot is in the middle, when it crouches, the location of its pivot moves because he's obviously got smaller. So we need to move the character. So if you go back to our B button crouch and go back to here, the next thing we need to do is move the character. Okay, so I'm going to use an action called iTween move to, I think it's called. Here we go. So that's what we want. It looks like a bit of a long one. And it is. Okay, so game object. Specify the game object. And the game object we want to move is the character. The ID we don't have to worry about. Transform position. We don't have to worry about either. We just need this vector position. So the time it's going to take, we should make it the same as our animate float time. So we want that at 0.5. It's asking, do we want a delay? No. Speed? It's irrelevant because we've already decided what the time should be. The ease type, we're going to leave it linear. And the space, we're going to make it self. Loop time, none. And then all of this stuff underneath, the look at and the path. So look at, path, and events, we can turn all that stuff off. I think that's all we're going to need to do with that. Apart from tell it what our vector position is. Now, I think the way that I've figured this out, because of the, let's have a look at the scene here. So there's our FPS controller's pivot, and obviously when we change this value, and then the pivot will, this will drop down to the floor like that. So we have to calculate sort of how much we're going to move. So I think I did this by, let's get back to our iTween move to. We actually need to move him upwards positively by 0.435. And I'm going to copy this, copy selected actions, and I'm going to move it across to this one as well. Dump it here, paste selected actions, and obviously on the way back we want to do the opposite, so we want to move him down by the same amount. Okay, so I think we can test this now then. Let's have a look what's going on. So I'm going to go back to the scene view. In fact, I'm going to rip off my game window. That's easier, because then I can have a look at my scene view. Okay, so let's have a look what's going on there. Aha! Okay. Our maths isn't quite right. And also, I can't press B again because there's no sort of exit event. So what I'm going to do is go to crouch, go down to the controller settings, note the iTween move to, and then come down here and have a look at events. So the finish event we're going to change to finished, which is this. So then it will send it on to the next thing. And I'm pretty sure we need to do that as well for the bottom one. So we click on this, iTween, blah, 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 blah. So we need the finish event finished. Okay, so now he should. Okay, so. Okay, he does seem to be doing what he should be doing. This value in our crouch here, that's correct. It needs to be minus 4.35. And this needs to be minus, I think it's 0.87 or something like that. So let's have a look, see what's going on now. Yeah, that makes sense. He's not, that's it. Okay, so we're actually scaling our controller and moving the guy so he's always in the right position. So that's good. So let's have a look at our character while we're doing that. So his position is -87. Okay, so that's right. And then we scale, yeah, and then back to -87. Okay, yeah. So it's based on the position of our character relative to the. Yes, so that's where we need it to move to, if you like. So if you look at our, I-tween move to. So the reason when we come back, we need to move him to this -0.87 is because that's where his original position is relative to the FPS controller. And the same for this. That's how much he's moved relative to the FPS controller. Okay, so now we've got those things set up. Is there anything else we've got to do? Well, he himself isn't being animated in any way, shape or form, so we'll just rip this off. So even though we've got our rigid body controller animated up and down, which is correct which is the right way to do it really, because obviously when we crouch, and we've sized the collider capsule, which means that we can get collision on stuff if we crawl under things. And I think later I'm going to set up something whereas if it detects a collision above you, you can't stand up from a crouch. It doesn't let you. Maybe I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. Maybe fire a ray upwards or something. But we're not worried about that at the moment. We're doing the crouch. So we've actually got our crouch working, but now we need to send a message to our animator. So we need to set up a new parameter. And this one is going to be a Boolean. So all it's asking is it crouched? So it's a true or false statement. Yes or no. So I'm going to call it crouched ? There we go. And now we need to set up a way to send a value to this. So in our B button crouch, we're going to need something a little extra. So I'm going to go back to that. So we've got our press the B button here, and then it gets passed onto this crouch. And I'm going to set a bool value. And it's going to be, I'm going to have to set up a new variable. And that variable, let's have a look. Well, what do we need? We need to set a bool value. So I suppose, let's get set bool. And I think it's just a normal one, yeah. Okay, so we can add this set bool value. And it's going to dump it at the end. I'm going to put it at the top, actually, because I want it to be set first. Oh, beg your pardon, I didn't quite grab it. So I'm going to take it all the way to the top. Dump it above animator float. So it sets this bool value and then does all this. By which time this float here will be changing and, doing its magic as well. So the bool variable, what is the bool variable that we want to do? Well, we haven't got one. We're going to set up a new variable and we're going to name it the same as our parameter up here, which is crouched ? Lovely. And we want to leave this set to false, its initial state anyway. So if we click crouched, it's set to false by default, which is what we want. But when we press the B button, it gets passed onto here. We want to make this bool value true. So we press the B button, it comes over, the bool value's false by default, and then it makes it true by the fact that we've pressed the B button. So, is there anything else we need to do? Well, we set the bool value, which is fine, but we need to pass that bool value onto our animator bool, our parameter up here. Just a note, we don't need to click every frame, because when you press the B button, it makes this bool true. Now, it doesn't need to check that every frame. It doesn't need to say, well, is it true or untrue? Because because we've made it true, so we don't need to make it every frame. The one thing that we do need to do now, though, is pass that onto our animator. So here we go, set animator ball. I'm going to add that to our state machine. Okay, so here it's saying, what do we want? Well, it's asking for a game object, and it's a game object that's got the that's actually got the animator, which is our character. It's asking for a character controller, so that's the object we need. So if we go back to our B button, all the way down to the bottom, what's the game object? It's our character again. So we can log that in there. What's the parameter that we're trying to change? Well, it's a parameter that we made called crouched ? Which is this bad boy up here. And it's asking what its value is. And we're going to get its value from our crouched variable. Every frame? No, we don't need to worry about that. Okay, so what we need to do now is copy this. I'm going to select this, copy it, and then go to our uncrouched and add it to here. Has it pasted it? Yeah. Okay, let's take it all the way to the top. And again, the bool variable is crouched. What's the bool value that we want to send? Well, this time we want to make it false. And as before, we want to do the same for our set animator bool. So let's go back to here, grab this and copy, and then go back to the bottom one there and paste it there. Paste actions. Okay, so now in this one, it's exactly the same. We don't need to check every frame, and all of that's already set up for us. So I suppose I can rip off the game window now and actually make sure that those things are actually happening for our animator. So I'm walking along, I'm loving it. And if you look at the crouch parameter in the animator window, when I press B, it's made true, and when I uncheck, it's made not true, which is great. That's exactly what we need. So now we can really start working in the animator, because it's got its input that it needs. So what do we need now? Well, I'm going to right click in an empty space. I'm just going to pull the Playmaker stuff down a little bit. I'll right click, I'm going to create a state, and I'm going to create a new blend tree. So this blend tree I'm going to call crouching. If I could spell, there we go. And then we can go inside this blend tree. Now what have we got? Well, again, we can rename this blend tree crouching. And we're going to need some motions for it, aren't we? Now, as before, I'm going to do what we did with this Locomotion one, where we've got a blend tree and then it goes into this 2D simple directional thing with its motions attached. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for our crouching. So double click on the crouching, we've named that crouching. The blend type is going to be 2D simple directional. As before, our parameters that we want to use to control these animations are going to be horizontal and vertical. And as before, I'm going to add 5 motion fields. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now for our clips then, we need to add our clips to this thing. As before, I'm going to go down to my folder that I created in a previous tutorial called AniClips, and that's where we grabbed them all from Mixamo. And again, I'm just going to close the Playmaker window so I can pull this out and we can see what we're doing then. And I think there's a way I can drag this up as well. Yeah, okay. Right, so we need all our crouching stuff then. So the first thing I'm going to need is my crouch idle, but as before, we're going to click on it. Remember, we've got the character avatar. If you already created... Yeah, okay, we've already included the avatar from our character there, so we don't need to worry about any of that. But animations, we've still got to fix some of the stuff in here. Animation compression, we're going to turn that off. As before, we're going to give it a loop time. And we're going to change all this stuff to original. And change the root transform position to Y. And we're going to apply that. And then I'm going to open it up, click on our crouching again, and drag the motion clip in there. The next clip that I'm going to need is... what do we need? I suppose we need our crouch walking, don't we? Sorry, I was pulling something out on another screen. Yeah, okay, cool. So we're going to need crouch walk forward. As before, the rig should already be set up from a previous tutorial. And the same thing again. It needs a loop time. This should all be set to original. And this should be baked into pose. Apply. Click on that again. Twirl it down so we can grab the... Yep, so now we've got crouch idle, crouch walk forward. I think you can guess what's next. Yes, it's crouch walk back. Which is this one. So it's the same story again. Off. Loop time. Original. Apply. And again. Crouch walk back. So now we just got to worry about the crouch walk left. And we need the loop time as well, yeah. Apply. So we've got a crouch walk left in there now. And crouch walk right. So as before, turn that off. Give it a loop time. Original body orientation. Wonderful. Oh, and its transform position. Excellent. Yep, seems good to me. So now we can lob our crouch walk right in there. Again, we can see all the names. Yep, okay, so that looks good. Just going to twirl this up so we don't need this any longer. Okay, so as before, the crouch idle's position is going to be 0, 0. The crouch walk forwards position is going to be +1 on the Y. So it's up here. Crouch walk back is going to be 0 on the X and -1 on the Y. So it's down here. The crouch walk left is going to be -1 in the X and 0 here. And the opposite for this. So it's going to be 0. +1 and 0 for the Y. So there's all our stuff. I'm going to leave it like that for the moment and come out of this. That should be okay for the time being. Now we need a way for us to go from our states to crouching, so we're going to need some transitions. Now you can crouch from an idle position or a locomotion position. So we're going to need to click on our idle, right click on our idle, make transition, and go to crouching. Then we're going to need to right click on crouching and make transition back to idle. And we're going to have to do the same for locomotion to crouching and from crouching to locomotion. Now, as before, there's going to be some conditions for going to this crouching state. So from our idle, first thing we need to do is take the exit times off of all of these. So if we click on our transition, has an exit time. Can you click on multiple of these? Yes, you can. Does that do the exit time for both? Yes. No, it doesn't. Okay, good. Okay, so you got to... Okay, so what's our criteria for going to crouching? Well, that's why we set up this crouched ball here. Okay, so the transition from going to idle to crouching the only condition we're going to need for that is it crouched? And we need to set that to true. If this boolean is crouching, which was set by our Playmaker FSM earlier, if this condition is true, well then you go to crouching. Great. Okay, so what about back to idle? Is that the same criteria? Yes, it is. But with a caveat. In fact, I'll show you just by making it the same actually. So crouch, it's going to be false. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's play this and see what happens. Okay, so we're idle. There you go, he crouches. Lovely. And then when you press B, he uncrouches. So everything looks as it should. Okay. But did you notice what happened there? If I'm moving and I press B, nothing happens. And if I press B again, nothing happens. But if I'm moving and I press B and then stop, it detects that the boolean's true and then crouches him. It goes into that animation. So we need us to make some conditions for our locomotion. So for us to go from a locomotive state to crouching, we've got to have some conditions. Again, we need the crouch. I'm just going to open this up a little bit. Crouched, it needs to be true. But let's just make these transitions as they should be. So to go from crouching to locomotion, the crouched position should be false. Okay, good. So that's all good. Right, I'm gonna rip off the game window here and just lob it down at the bottom and go back to our animator window because I want to be able to see what's going on with our state when we're playing. If I hit play now, you can see he's in an idle state. I move forward, it bleeds into the locomotion. Lovely. So if I'm idle, I'm going to crouch. And I'm going to uncrouch. So that's fine. But what if I'm moving? Okay, so I'm going to move. I'm moving. And then I crouch. And he goes into our... Okay, that's not actually too bad. But you'll notice... let me just drag this window up a little bit. You'll notice... Actually, I also want to sort out our camera height as well while we're at it. So where's our camera position? Oh, there we go. That's why. It's too low. Okay, so let's just get his head in the scene there. Makes more sense. So in the game window, you'll notice that if we look at the game window and we're walking, and I press crouch, it shoots over to crouched, and then when I uncrouched, it doesn't actually go back to locomotion. So I'm crouching. Now, when I uncrouch, look at the blend tree. It's going to shoot back to idle and then to locomotion, and we don't want that. So we need some, because it looks weird. Look, he's moving there, he stands up straight and then starts walking. Weird. So we don't want that. So what we've got to do is we've actually got to add some more conditions into this thing here. So the conditions for going from locomotion to crouching, I'm going to make so we don't want to go back to idle. So from locomotion to crouching, the conditions should be: is he crouching, and is his speed greater than 0.1? And the conditions to go from crouching to locomotion should be: is he crouched? False. And again, is his speed greater than 0.1? Because then this way, if our character's moving, we can cut out this idle altogether. It just checks the speed and then it will go between these two. So let's check that that's actually happening. Okay, so if we look at our blend tree now, he's moving. I've crouched and he's gone straight to crouching, and when I uncrouch, oh, it's still going to idle. And there's a reason, because we haven't set up our extra conditions for what allows him to go back to idle. So even though these two things are correct, these two transitions are totally correct, the only condition to go back to idle here is he crouched. So we need to make sure that he's got more than those conditions on this. So to go from crouching to idle, his condition should be, is he crouched? False, which is correct. Okay, and then we need to add another one and say walking speed, is it less than 0.1? And then for the other transition even, from idle to crouched, there is no, we don't need to worry about another, we don't need to worry if he's got a speed greater than anything, because you could just be idle and then go to a crouching idle. So we can leave this one as it is. So let's check that this works now. Okay, so we're walking along, we're loving it, and then, okay, we're going to need to see our blend tree, aren't we? Excuse me. Okay, cool. Aye. Excuse me, guys. There we go. Okay, so we're idle. Then we go to Locomotion, and if I press the crouch button now, you should hopefully just go straight to crouching. Yeah, lovely. And if I stand up, instead of going through idle, we should hopefully go through straight back to Locomotion. Boom, yeah, straight back there. Great. And if I'm idle, we'll just go to crouching and back again. Sweet, so it looks like we've got everything working. Well, it appears to be, and if you've got this setup going on now, you're probably pretty happy with yourself, thinking, yeah, everything's cool, but we've got some problems. If I'm crouching and I press the right trigger, we've got some kind of crouched run. And it doesn't look very good because the animations don't match up. We could homogenize those animations, but again, I don't think if you were crouching you'd be able to sprint. So basically in my setup I want to be able to deactivate that, and that's going to be exactly what we're going to do in our next tutorial. So as always, check out the website digitalmeet.uk, YouTube channel Digital Meet, Facebook and Twitter. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!